Hello and welcome to another My NT marriage video. And today I wanted to talk about our next counselling session. Now, I have since heard that people on the spectrum tend to like facts and figures and official people who have PhDs and are certified and things like that. They will tend not to listen to others who aren't, and that explains why in cases of relationships they're not necessarily going to listen to their partners, because in their opinions their partners are not experienced. So for example, I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not a child psychologist, I'm not a sex therapist, I'm not a psychologist. And so when I talked about things in the relationship, I tended not to be believed. I would say things like, if you keep fault finding and critiquing, you're going to harm the relationship. And he was like, what do you know? So things like that. So we'd have a lot of sort of conflict around me trying to talk to him about things and him refusing to believe that I knew what I was talking about. Which is kind of ironic, because his special interest is sports. And if I said to him, well, you're not in the NBA, so what do you know about basketball? That would be ridiculous. He would be thinking, well, I have studied and learned and know all of the techniques and yada yada. So it's similar in my situation with stuff that I know about. I'm not a professional per se, but I had learned a thing or two and studied bits and pieces and read and stuff like that. Anyway, so the point I'm getting at is, if not for outside intervention, I'm not sure we would have ever made it to where we are now, because I couldn't reason with him. I couldn't logic my way out of stuff. I couldn't say to him, look, I am meeting part of your needs and therefore, it would be nice if you met mine. And then he would just go, oh, okay then. I couldn't say to him, look, if you spoil the children, they're not going to respect you. And he would go, okay then, I see what you're saying. So it was a lot of conflict around me trying to give direction and him not wanting to take it. And so, as I said in my previous video, when we'd split up, I had recommended that we go and see a counsellor so that we could learn to co-parent together, because our parenting styles were so different. So for example, their bedtime would be 9 o'clock. And if I left it to him, he would just keep them up and he would play with them before bedtime and all of that sort of stuff. And then I would have to come in and be kind of the bad cop and say, it's bedtime. Why are they still up? And so then again, he looks like a hero because he's playing with them all the time, keeping them up. He's not being strict and stuff like this. But on the other hand, he couldn't control the children. We would have people, family and friends and things like this, who would say, well, the children are so well behaved when she's around, and then when she's gone, they're not. So people were noticing stuff like that. But he still didn't want to be on the same page as me. Admittedly, he did say that because he worked away, he felt guilty about that, and so he would then try to, kind of love bomb them, I guess, bombard them with love and gifts and games and breaking the rules and all this sort of stuff, so that then they would feel better about him because he's away all the time. So I can sort of see where he's coming from. It was just obviously detrimental with regards to the children and their upbringing, because they've got one parent doing one set of rules and another parent doing a whole nother non-set of rules, and they couldn't tell if they were Arthur or Martha. So we see this counsellor. It's a weekend retreat, and the first part of the weekend retreat, the guy was waffling on a lot, to be honest. He was talking a lot of anecdotes about guys he knew in the police force and guys he knew in the army and stuff like that, and how they kind of related to our situation and things like this. And partway through that first day, my husband says, are we going to get on with this? When are we going to start? And the counsellor said to him, well, I'm glad you asked. He said, I can see that you're really unplugged. You're really distant. You're kind of leaning back in your chair, get your arms folded, you're disinterested, you don't want to be here. I'm waiting for you to be present. So my husband sits up a little bit and goes, all right, I'm ready, kind of thing. And the counsellor then starts talking with us about our specific situations. So one of the first things my husband was saying to the counsellor is, we're just two different people, and I don't really like her, and I've just settled for her, and stuff like that. And the counsellor said to him, well, firstly, that's a really awful thing to say to somebody. And secondly, that isn't true, because you've had years and years and years where you could have left if you wanted. He said, I put it to you that you actually like the relationship and that's why you stay. And then, on the other hand, my concerns were obviously, number one, the parenting. And so the counsellor had said to him, I don't understand why you're not following her lead. He says she will have spoken to her mum and her friends and gone on the internet and Googled and read books and learned and, all of this, absorbing all this information. And he said, why aren't you just following her lead? And my husband says, no, she hasn't. And then he turns to me and he goes, have you? And I said, of course I've done all that. And so the counsellor said, just follow her example. And going back to the MBA thing, it's a similar thing. I may not be a child psychologist, but I have learned how to parent well. And so for my husband to be completely disregarding that and fobbing it off is just as silly as me saying to him, well, you don't play in the NBA, so what do you know about basketball? And so that was actually a turning point for us. Once he'd heard the counsellors say that, he started to, click that I did know what I was talking about. And he'd had numerous family members on his side talk about how skilled my parenting skills were, even making comments about unruly cousins who'd need to come to my house so that I could help them learn and grow and become good, healthy people. So people knew it. It was just that my husband didn't want to, believe that I knew stuff. And so I don't know about you if you've faced the same thing in your relationship where you talk to your partner about things and they think that because you're not an expert, you don't know what you're talking about. If that's the case for you, feel free to leave a comment below so we can discuss that. One of the main things that this counsellor did, because this counselling session was a weekend retreat, a relationship rescue type of situation that went for a weekend, and I think it was something like 8 hours each day, so it was fairly intense. And one of the things that the counsellor really sat down and worked through with us, primarily with my husband, was the good aspects of the relationship. Because my husband does tend to sort of see the negative side of things. He'll see things like the dishes aren't washed immediately after dinner and therefore the relationship is a catastrophe. You know what I mean? Whereas I think that those things are small and minor. And one thing that was really evident with the counsellor, as with all of our counsellors, was that my husband wasn't going in there and saying, she's rude to me and she insults me and she puts me down and she has digs at me and she swears at me and she's awful to me. He never had those kinds of things to say. He was just focused on the housework and how bad I was at it. And the counsellor spent a lot of that weekend retreat getting my husband to see the positives in the relationship. You've got a good woman, she cooks, she cleans, she's raising nice, well-behaved, respectful children, she's not financially ripping you a new bumhole, she's got a good head on her shoulders, she's steady. So Like, if he didn't know anybody, you'd think I'd slipped him a few hundred on the side and said, just talk me up, you know. But it wasn't so much just talking me up, it was really just talking the whole relationship up. My husband had said, for example, that he would respect me more if we had achieved something if I had achieved more with my life. And the counsellor, you know, was getting him to understand that being a good parent is achieving something. You might not be rolling in the dough because you're not paid to be a stay-at-home parent, but there's still a skill involved in that. Like, I wasn't a stay-at-home parent with feral, unruly children. I was a stay-at-home mum who had very well-behaved children. So the counsellor was pointing out to him that things like that are a skill set. And the fact that we sold my house to move into the house that we now have, that's me contributing. And the fact that he doesn't have to pay a babysitter or a chef or all of the other things that he would have to pay for if he just had him and the children and I wasn't in the picture, that is also me giving to this relationship, achieving, helping him achieve. Another thing the counsellor had said to him, if it wasn't for your wife being here, you wouldn't be able to work away. You wouldn't be able to have that shift work job that you've worked so hard to get. So again, she is contributing. So it was a good session in the sense that the counsellor really focused on the good parts about our relationship, and it really helped hubby to see that it wasn't all doom and gloom. And of course, the needs part did come up, and the counsellor did talk about how if you're not going to meet her needs, eventually that is going to affect the relationship. So you need to put in some effort and, you know, communicate with her if that's what she's wanting. Sit with her and have conversations about who she is and what she likes and what skills has she learned about parenting and things like this. So it was really good in that sense. It helped hubby sort of just see outside the box a little bit. And because they don't have a lot of sort of social circles, it can be hard for them to know the bigger picture, because if you're in your little box at home spending time by yourself, absorbed in your special interest, you're not necessarily going to be talking to other people and getting their opinions and hearing from them about how life rolls. So when we speak to this counsellor, he gets to hear the other side of the story. So anyway, that's how our weekend retreat went. He didn't move back in after that. He moved back in later on, and I'll get to that in a little while. But after the weekend retreat, we just parented a little better. There was less of that clash. He did reinstall my allowance and things like that as well. The counsellor did help with regards to that, you know, saying that you shouldn't be punishing her for things like separating, because she's still the mother of your children and she still needs to be able to support them and buy them food and all of that sort of stuff. So it did help in the sense that we weren't at loggerheads and really clashing while we were separated. So again, it was very worthwhile, and because he's very unlikely to hear it from me, we always did need that outside intervention. And I'm not sure if it would be the same in your case, if your partner would be open to outside intervention. Maybe they're really good at listening to you and I just have a particularly stubborn Aspie. I mean, anything is possible. But yeah, that's how a counselling session went. If you can relate to any of this, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you've tried counselling, please share and let us know how that goes. Or if you want to go to counselling but your partner refuses, how's that going as well? Is that would be causing all manner of conflict for you. It would be really hard, I imagine. So feel free to share whatever is going on for you. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it.